My sister hurled a wine glass across my parents' dining room and screamed that I ruined her life just because I didn't tell her I was pregnant before I told the whole family. I never got to enjoy the moment. The glass hit the wall 6 inches from my mother's china cabinet. Red wine sprayed across the wallpaper like a wound opening. My nephew started screaming from his booster seat. My mother's hands flew to her mouth. "How long have you known?" Priya's voice cracked on every word. 6 weeks, I said. She stood so fast her chair scraped backward across the hardwood. 6 weeks. 6 weeks, and you told everyone else before you told me. Priya, don't! She pointed at me, her finger shaking. I told you about all 4 of my pregnancies before I told anyone else. All 4, Emma. And you couldn't give me that. My mother tried to reach for her arm. Priya yanked it away and turned on her instead. Did you know? Before tonight? No, sweetheart, I didn't. She spun toward my cousin Freya, then my brother Nolan, accusing them with her eyes before she even opened her mouth. Did either of you know? Priya, nobody knew, Nolan said. That was the point. The point was to exclude me. My father stood up slowly, the way he does when he's trying to keep his voice level. Priya, sit down. Your sister is having a baby. Be happy for her. How am I supposed to be happy when she deliberately cut me out? She rounded on Owen next, my husband, who hadn't said a single word since the announcement. This was you. You turned her against her own family. Maybe, Nolan said, quiet but clear. If you could keep a secret for once, people would actually tell you things. That was when she grabbed the wine glass off the table and threw it. I want to tell you that moment was the worst part of the night. It wasn't. Not even close. Because 20 minutes later, after her husband Silas walked out the front door and didn't come back, after we heard her screaming his name in the driveway, after the sound of his car faded into nothing, Priya came back inside with mascara running down her face and screamed at me that I had destroyed her marriage out of spite. She had no idea what I actually knew, and she had no idea how much worse it was about to get. I was 31 years old that Thanksgiving, married to Owen for 4 years, living 20 minutes from my parents in the same suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, where Priya and I grew up. Priya was 34, married to Silas for 9 years, with 4 kids ranging from 2 to 8. She'd always been the sister people described as a lot, with a fond little laugh, like it was an endearing quirk instead of a warning label. Priya could not keep a secret. Not a small one, not a big one, not her own, and definitely not anyone else's. When I got into graduate school at Ohio State in 2016, I asked my parents to let me tell people myself. Priya posted it to Facebook before I'd even signed the offer letter, tagging me with 3 exclamation points and a caption that made it sound like her achievement to announce. When Owen proposed to me on a hiking trail in Hocking Hills in 2020, I hadn't even called my own mother yet. Priya had seen the ring in a text I sent her, just her, because she was my sister and I trusted her, and had it posted with a "she said yes" caption within the hour. My mother found out from a stranger's comment. When I got promoted to regional manager at my company in early 2022, I planned to tell everyone at Sunday dinner. Priya announced it before I'd even walked through my parents' front door, because I'd mentioned it to her over the phone 2 days earlier, just between us. Every single time she said the same thing. I just get excited. I can't help it. And every single time, my mother smoothed it over, and I let it go, because that's what you do with a sister you love even when she exhausts you. There was one incident, though, that should have told me everything. In the spring of 2023, my cousin Freya had a miscarriage at 11 weeks. She told 3 people, her husband, her mother, and Priya, because Priya had been through something similar, and Freya needed someone who understood. Within 4 days, half the extended family knew, including people Freya hadn't spoken to in years. Freya was devastated all over again, this time by the exposure on top of the grief. Priya cried when Freya confronted her. She said she'd only told 1 or 2 people because she was worried about Freya and wanted people praying for her. Freya didn't speak to Priya for 6 months after that. I remembered that when Owen and I found out I was pregnant again in September 2024. We had been trying for 2 years by then. In the spring of 2023, the same season as Freya's loss, which had felt like some kind of cruel cosmic echo, I'd miscarried at 9 weeks. I hadn't told anyone outside Owen and my doctor, not even Priya. Especially not Priya, if I'm honest, though I told myself at the time it was just because I wasn't ready. So when the second pregnancy held past the point where the first one hadn't, Owen and I made a decision together. We would tell everyone at the same time, in the same room, so that no one moment or no one relationship would carry more weight than another. No early phone calls, no advance warning, not even to my sister. I know how that sounds now. I know it sounds like I was already building a wall around her specifically. Looking back, maybe I was. Maybe some part of me had learned after the promotion and the proposal and Freya's miscarriage that information around Priya didn't stay information. It became a performance, and the performance was always about her. I didn't hate my sister. I want to be clear about that, because it would be easy to make her sound like a villain from the very first page, and she wasn't. Not completely. Not yet. She was warm in a lot of ways. She remembered everyone's birthdays. She'd driven 4 hours in an ice storm the year before to bring my mother medicine when she had the flu. She loved her kids fiercely, sometimes to the point of exhaustion, and I knew, because she'd told me more than once in quieter moments, that she felt invisible in her own marriage. Silas worked long hours as a regional sales director and traveled 2 weeks out of every month. Priya had put her own career as a dental hygienist on hold to raise 4 kids under 9, and some nights when she called me, her voice had a flatness to it that worried me more than the drama ever did. I didn't know that Thanksgiving, just how much that flatness had been been building towards something else. I only knew that we had decided, Owen and I, to hold our secret a little tighter than usual, and Priya found out about the baby exactly the way everyone else did. Standing up from her chair at my parents' dining table, my hand resting on Owen's arm, my mother already crying before I'd even finished the sentence. For about 4 seconds, it was perfect. Then Priya's face changed and the 4 seconds ended. The first sign that this Thanksgiving wasn't going to end quietly came about 90 seconds after Priya's initial question. She'd stopped crying angry tears and switched into something colder. "You know what? It's fine," she said, in the voice she used when it was very much not fine. "I'm used to being last. I'm always the last one to know things in this family." My mother reached for her hand. "Sweetheart, that's not true." "It is true. It's always true. It was true with grad school. It was true with the promotion. Those were things you found out about because you told people," Nolan said. He wasn't trying to be cruel. He was trying to point out the obvious, the way siblings do when they've watched the same pattern for 30 years and finally run out of patience. Priya's eyes snapped to him. "So this is my fault. Everyone finding out I'm pregnant is somehow my fault too. Is that it?" "Nobody said that," my father said. "You're all thinking it. That was step one. The ceiling I thought couldn't get any lower. The accusation that the entire family was secretly against her. It felt in the moment like the peak of the conflict. It wasn't. Within another minute, she'd moved the target from the family in general to me specifically, then to Owen, and each time she found a new foothold to climb higher into her own anger. "You know what this is," she said, looking directly at me now. "This is about control. You've always needed to control the narrative around your own life. I don't think wanting to tell everyone at once is controlling, Priya. You excluded me on purpose. Don't pretend you didn't." I didn't pretend. I told her the truth, which in retrospect was probably the wrong move, though I still don't know what the right one would have been. "I didn't tell you early because things haven't stayed private with you before. I'm sorry if that hurts, but it's true." The table went silent in the specific way rooms go silent right before something breaks. Priya's mouth opened and closed. Then she laughed, short and humorless. Wow. Okay, so you've all just decided I can't be trusted. Is that the family consensus? Quick pause from the story. If you enjoy these stories, consider taking a listen to our Spotify show, linked in the description, for early access to new stories in better audio quality. Now back to the video. Nobody answered her question, which was its own kind of answer, and that silence seemed to be what finally tipped her from anger into something more desperate. She turned to Silas, who had been quiet the entire dinner, and grabbed his arm. "Say something. Defend me." Silas looked uncomfortable in the specific way a man looks when he's been asked to pick a side in a fight he didn't start. "Priya, maybe we should just..." Unbelievable. Even my own husband won't back me up. That was step 2. Recruiting an ally and being wounded when the ally didn't fully commit. It's a pattern I'd seen from her my entire life, but I'd never watched it happen in real time, escalating minute by minute, the way you watch weather turn on the horizon and realize too late you should have gone inside. My mother tried once more, gently, to redirect the conversation back to the pregnancy, to something happy. "Can we just be excited for Emma tonight, please?" "Sure," Priya snapped. "Let's all be excited that I found out my sister is having a baby the same way a stranger on Facebook would." "You're the one who ruined Facebook announcements for this entire family," Nolan said, and I could hear the exhaustion under his words. 30 years of it. "You did it to me with my job offer. You did it to Emma with grad school. You did it to Freya with her miscarriage, Priya. Do you not remember that?" He shouldn't have brought up Freya. I understood why he did. It was the clearest example, the most damning one. But bringing it into the room like that was step 3. The moment the ceiling broke a second time, Priya's face crumpled in a way that looked almost like it hurt her physically. "That was different," she said, quieter now. "I was worried about her. I wanted people to pray for her. You told Aunt Carol within 4 days. Aunt Carol, who Freya hadn't spoken to in 2 years. "I didn't tell Aunt Carol. Someone else must have." "You told Mom, and Mom mentioned it at book club because you told her it was fine to share," Freya said, speaking for the first time all night, her voice low and even. "I asked you specifically not to tell anyone, Priya. I asked you because I trusted you more than anyone else." The room had gone from a pregnancy announcement to a referendum on 9 years of broken confidence in under 10 minutes. I remember thinking, even as it happened, that this was the moment things could have stopped. Priya could have apologized. She could have taken the opening Freya had handed her, however painfully, and owned it. Instead, she did what she always did when cornered. She reframed herself as the victim. "So, this is an intervention," she said, standing again, her chair scraping the floor a second time. "This is what tonight actually was. Emma's pregnancy was just the excuse to finally gang up on me." "Nobody is ganging up on you," my father said, his patience visibly thinning. "It certainly feels that way from here." "Maybe," I said, "and I regret how sharp this came out, though I don't regret the truth of it. If you took even 1 second to think about how your actions affect other people, instead of how everyone's reactions make you feel, this wouldn't keep happening." That was step 4. That was the line that broke her open completely, because it wasn't an accusation about one incident. It was an accusation about her entire character, delivered in front of her husband and her mother and her children in the next room, and there was no version of that landing softly. She looked at me for a long moment. Something shifted behind her eyes, and I want to be honest and say I didn't fully understand what I was seeing at the time. I thought it was rage. Looking back, I think it might have been fear. "You want to talk about affecting people?" she said. "Fine. Let's talk about how you disappeared for 2 months last spring and wouldn't tell anyone why. Let's talk about secrets, Emma, since apparently we're doing that tonight." tonight. My stomach dropped. She was talking about the miscarriage, though she didn't know that specifically. She just knew there had been a gap, a silence, something I hadn't explained. I hadn't told her because I hadn't told anyone. And in that moment, with the whole table watching, I felt a flash of the exact fear that must live in her chest every single day. The fear of being exposed before you're ready. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. Not without unraveling something that was mine and Owen's alone to carry. My silence, though, must have looked to her like confirmation that I had my own secrets, which somehow made her feel entitled to detonate the last piece of ceiling standing between the argument and total collapse. You know what? I'm done being the bad guy in this family, she said. I'm done. If we're airing everything out, then maybe everyone should know some other things too. I felt Owen's hand find mine under the table. I didn't know what she was about to say. For one terrible second, I thought she somehow knew about the miscarriage and was going to say it out loud, the way she said everything out loud, and I braced myself for that grief to be stolen from me, the way every other private moment of my life had been stolen from her mouth before. She didn't say that. She said something else. Something about feeling trapped, about nobody in this family ever asking how she was really doing, about being invisible in her own house while Silas traveled and the kids screamed and nobody, not once, checked on her the way they were now clearly capable of checking on me. It was, I realized later, the closest she ever came that night to telling the truth about what was actually happening in her life, but she buried it in so much deflection and self-pity that nobody in the room could hear it as anything other than another performance. And that's when I stood up. That's when I said the thing I'd been holding for 6 months, the thing that broke the last ceiling into pieces that could never be put back together. If we're sharing everything like real family, I said, my voice louder than I meant it to be, then everyone should know Priya has been texting her ex, Trent, for 6 months. I want to explain before I go further exactly what I knew and how I knew it, because that detail matters more than anything else in this story, and it comes back around in a way I didn't see coming. 5 weeks earlier, in mid-October, Priya had left her phone on my kitchen counter while she used the bathroom during a visit. It buzzed. I glanced at it out of habit, the way you glance at any phone that lights up near you, and saw a name I recognized from high school, Trent Holloway. She'd dated him for 2 years before Silas, and I remembered him vaguely as someone she described once as the one who got away, which at the time I'd taken as harmless nostalgia. The message preview said something I couldn't unsee. I think about that night all the time too. I didn't go looking for more. I want that on the record. But over the next several weeks, I noticed things I hadn't noticed before, because once you see something, you can't stop seeing it. She was on her phone constantly, angling the screen away from people. She brought up Trent's name twice in casual conversation, both times followed by a strange, too quick laugh. Once, at my mother's house, I saw a notification banner slide across her lock screen. His name again, a heart emoji, before she snatched the phone off the counter. I never confronted her. I never told Owen, or my mother, or anyone. I told myself it wasn't my business, that plenty of people text old exes without it meaning anything, that I was probably reading too much into fragments. I told myself a lot of things over those 5 weeks, because the alternative was accepting that my sister's marriage was quietly falling apart in a way that would eventually become everyone's business, whether I said anything or not. So when she stood in my parents' dining room and accused me of hiding a 2-month gap in my life, when she framed herself as the victim of a family that didn't care about her real pain, something in me finally cracked. I didn't plan to say it. I want to be honest about that too. It came out of me the way water comes out of a cracked dam, not a decision so much as a collapse. The room went silent in a way I had never experienced before or since. Silas's face moved through confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked like the floor had opened underneath him. What did you say? He asked, his voice very quiet. Priya had gone completely white. Emma, that's not what you think it is. I'm not saying what I think it is, I said. I'm saying what I saw. Your phone, 5 weeks ago, at my house. You went through my phone? It was sitting on my counter and it lit up. I didn't go through anything. I saw what was on the screen. Silas stood up slowly. He didn't yell. That was somehow worse than if he had. How long, he said, have you been texting Trent Holloway? Silas, it's not what it looks like. We're old friends. We reconnected on Facebook. How long, Priya? She didn't answer. That silence answered for her. Silas grabbed his coat off the back of his chair without another word. My mother tried to say something, some plea for calm, but he was already moving toward the front door. Priya went after him, calling his name, her voice climbing into a register I'd never heard from her before, something closer to panic than anger. We heard the front door. We heard the driveway. We heard a car door slam and an engine turn over, and then we heard her voice outside, smaller and smaller, chasing headlights down the street until there was nothing left to hear at all. She came back inside 20 minutes later. Her mascara had run in 2 black lines down her cheeks. Her hands were shaking. Silas wasn't answering his phone, she said, over and over, like saying it enough times might change the outcome. Then she turned on me. You destroyed my marriage, she said. You destroyed it just to get back at me for a pregnancy announcement. Do you understand what you did? I didn't make you text him for 6 months, I said. I just said it out loud. You could have talked to me privately. You could have warned me. Instead, you humiliated me in front of my entire family, in front of my husband on purpose because you wanted revenge. My mother tried to step between us. Priya wouldn't stop, spiraling into accusations that I'd been waiting for the perfect moment to expose her, that I'd been jealous of her for years, that I'd always resented how much attention she got growing up, and this was my chance to finally take her down. It was my father who finally spoke, and his voice was quiet enough enough that the whole room had to lean in to hear it. "Priya," he said, "nobody made you text him. Nobody made you lie about it for 6 months. You made those choices. Take responsibility for them instead of blaming your sister for saying something true." She broke down completely then, sliding down against the wall until she was sitting on the floor of my parents' dining room, sobbing in a way that didn't feel performative anymore, not even to me. She said she'd been unhappy for years, invisible, exhausted, running a house of 4 kids alone 2 weeks out of every month while Silas traveled for work. She didn't even fully understand anymore. She said texting Trent made her feel, for the first time in a long time, like a person instead of a function. She swore nothing physical had happened. She kept apologizing, but I noticed she was looking at my mother when she said it, not at me, not at Silas's empty chair. She left that night with her 4 kids and didn't look at me once on her way out the door. For 3 days, nobody heard anything from her beyond a few vague texts to my mother saying she was staying at a friend's house. My mother started planning a family meeting for the following Sunday, the kind of meeting our family has never once needed before, the kind where everyone sits in a circle and tries to figure out how to keep from losing each other completely. Then Silas called my father. He was staying at his brother's place in Dayton, he said, needing space to think. Before he hung up, he asked one question that changed everything, a question that made my father go quiet on the phone in a way I'd never heard from him before. He asked if anyone in the family had known about Trent before Thanksgiving. My father asked around the room. Nolan said no. Freya said no. My mother said no. I sat there for a long moment before I said, "I did. I found out a month ago." The room's reaction wasn't anger exactly. It was something more complicated, a recalibration of who I was in the story, from the person who'd exposed a secret to the person who'd been sitting on it, silent for weeks, watching my sister's marriage erode in real time, and saying nothing until it served a purpose for me. I want to tell you I had a good reason for the silence beyond the ones I've already given you. I don't know if I do. I think part of me was protecting Priya, in some warped way, the way you protect someone from a truth you're not ready to hold yourself. And part of me, the part I'm least proud of, was protecting myself, saving the information the way you save something sharp for exactly the moment you'll need it most. That moment came at Thanksgiving, and I used it, and I've had to sit with what that says about me every day since. But there was something else, something I hadn't told anyone, not even Owen, not even in the 3 days since Thanksgiving. The night I saw the text from Trent on Priya's phone, before she came out of the bathroom and snatched it off the counter, I saw one more thing, a second notification, stacked just below the first, from a contact saved simply as Dr. Ferris OB. The preview read, "Confirmed, 7 weeks. Please call to schedule your first appointment." Priya had been pregnant. Before Thanksgiving, before my announcement. She never told anyone. She wasn't pregnant anymore by the time of the dinner. I'd noticed, in the weeks after, the absence of the symptoms she usually complained about loudly to anyone who'd listen. The wine she drank freely at Thanksgiving itself. The total silence on a topic she'd never once in her life kept quiet about. Something had happened between that October notification and the Thanksgiving table, and I didn't know what, and it wasn't my place to know, but it explained things. It explained the flatness in her voice on our phone calls. It explained the desperation underneath her anger that night, the particular way she'd said nobody ever asked how she was really doing. It explained, maybe, some of why she'd reached for Trent in the first place. Not out of simple betrayal, but out of a kind of grief she had nowhere to put. Married to a man who was gone 2 weeks a month, surrounded by a family that had learned, over 34 years, to brace itself against her instead of holding her. I didn't say any of this at the family meeting that Sunday. I still haven't said it to anyone but Owen, and I only told him because I couldn't carry it alone anymore. The family meeting was quiet, more subdued than I expected. Priya didn't come. My mother relayed secondhand that she and Silas were seeing a counselor, that he'd moved back home but was sleeping in the guest room, that the kids didn't fully understand what was happening, but knew enough to be quieter than usual at dinner. Freya, of everyone, reached out to Priya first, an unexpected mercy, given the miscarriage history between them. But Freya told me later that watching Priya collapse on that dining room floor had shown her something she hadn't been able to see before. Not an excuse, but a person underneath the pattern. Nolan didn't speak to Priya for 2 months. When he finally did, it was a short, careful conversation, more truce than reconciliation. My parents split in their instincts, the way parents sometimes do when a family fractures. My mother wanted to hold everyone close and smooth it over the way she'd always smoothed over Priya's disasters. My father, for the first time in my memory, held a firm line. He loved Priya, but he wasn't going to pretend her choices didn't have consequences, and he told her so directly more than once in conversations that left her in tears but didn't leave her abandoned. I grieved in those months, something I hadn't expected to grieve. Not the sister Priya had actually been, but the sister I'd always hoped she might become. I thought about the 4-hour drive she made through an ice storm to bring my mother medicine. I thought about how she used to sing off-key in the car when we were kids, completely unembarrassed, and how I used to love her without complication before either of us understood how complicated love could get. Some of that person was still in her. I believe that. I still believe it now. But belief doesn't undo 34 years of pattern, and it doesn't undo the specific damage of a Thanksgiving night neither of us will ever fully recover from. There were logistical messes too, the kind that don't make it into the emotional center of a story, but that eat up months of real time. Priya and Silas separated their finances temporarily while they figured out whether the marriage would hold. My parents had to navigate holidays for an entire year with the careful choreography of divorced parents, even though nobody had actually divorced. Separate visits, staggered schedules, careful phone calls in advance to make sure nobody walked into a room unprepared. My son was born in April, and Priya came to the hospital alone without Silas, sat by my bed for 20 minutes, and told me, quietly, that she was sorry. Not for everything, just for that night. It was a start. I'm 32 now. My son is over a year old. Priya and Silas are still together, still working through what nearly ended them, and I don't know if they'll make it. Not fully, not really. I've stopped trying to predict outcomes for other people's marriages. I learned that lesson at a dinner table over a wine glass and a name from high school. Priya and I talk sometimes, carefully, the way you talk to someone after a car accident you both walked away from, but still can't quite believe you survived. We haven't talked about the pregnancy she lost before Thanksgiving. I don't know if she knows that I know. I don't know if I'll ever tell her, or if some secrets are meant to stay exactly where they are, carried quietly by one person so the other doesn't have to carry the weight of being seen in their worst, most unguarded moment. I think about that Thanksgiving more than I'd like to admit. I think about the version of that night where I said nothing, where I let Priya's accusations sit unanswered, where some other truth eventually surfaced on its own, in its own time, without my hand forcing it into the light. I don't know if that version would have ended any better. I only know the one that actually happened, and I have to live inside it. I never got to enjoy the moment I'd waited 2 years and one loss to finally have. That's the part that still catches in my throat sometimes, late at night, when my son is finally asleep and the house is quiet enough to hear my own thoughts. I didn't get the celebration. I got a wine glass against the wall and a marriage nearly ending and a secret I'm still carrying that isn't mine to put down. But I got my son. I got a family that, cracked as it is, chose each other again and again through every ugly conversation that followed. And I learned something I wish I hadn't needed a shattered wine glass to learn, that the truth doesn't disappear just because you decide to hold it quietly. It waits. It always waits. And eventually, it finds the exact moment you're least prepared for it, and it comes out anyway, whether or not you're ready to watch what it breaks on its way through the door.